AI demand isn't going anywhere. That's the clear message from Nvidia's stellar first quarter results and robust second quarter guidance. Even as AI evolves past the training stage, Nvidia founder and CEO Jensen Huang told us he still believes the company is well positioned. Here's what he said.
We have a great position in inference because inference is just a really complicated problem. And the software stack is complicated. The type of models that people use is complicated. There's so many different types. It's just going to be a giant market opportunity for us.
We're looking at how to navigate the future of AI with the Yahoo Finance playbook. To discuss, Bajarin, CEO and principal analyst at Creative Strategies, and Paul Meeks, Co-CIO at Harvest Portfolio Management and partner at Wall Street Beats. Thanks, guys, for being here. Really appreciate it. Ben, I want to start with you. What Jensen was sort of referring to there, and there has been some questioning from the analyst investor community about this move from training to inference, right? From when AI models are learning stuff to when they're doing stuff, right? When they're analyzing and forecasting, and whether NVIDIA chips would be best poised for that, especially given their cost. Did this quarter and forecast put that to bed, or do we still have questions about the future growth rate?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it put it to bed, right? This is a highly competitive market. You've got Intel, AMD, you've got the hyperscalers doing their own inference chips and AI accelerators. So clearly there's a battle for these workloads. I think that's the best way to really think about it. That said, I think the argument that he's making is really that the NVIDIA systems, right? And it's not just GPUs, it's the whole systems. It's the CPUs that are on board, it's the networking, it's the memory, it's everything that they build is going to be the best total cost of ownership for these workloads. And so there's good argument for that. I think you can make that case. I really don't think we know the answers to that yet, but I do think this is becoming the most interesting thing to track, which is one, what are those workloads that are inferencing? We want NVIDIA to give us more details of that. And then secondarily, does that number continue to grow each quarter, and that they do run more inferencing workloads on their DGX systems?
And Paul, let's bring you in here as well and kind of start big picture here, Paul. Interested just to get your take on that NVIDIA print. They reported they beat, Paul. Investors love it. What did you make of the report, Paul? And what did it teach you kind of about the bigger, broader AI theme and trade?
Well, the thing that I was looking for was not any metric in particular financially. It was tell me the vision and make me feel more comfortable coming out of the conference call that there is a longer runway for NVIDIA in all kinds of facets of AI infrastructure build than we thought. Because the issue with NVIDIA is, with the stock up 3-4-fold last year, doubled already this year, is do they ever run into a growth wall? Because if they do, only 2 fiscal years ago, this company only earned a couple dollars per share. Then it goes to $28 this year, probably $35 to $40 next year. But if they actually see at some point, and I'm not saying when, any sort of slowdown in spending, the stock used to be much lower because its earnings power was 3, not 45 or 50. So that is the absolute key. And I think Jensen Huang did a nice job yesterday articulating the vision. Only he can do that to make us feel that they've got their bases covered and they're not going to peak, just as Ben said, necessarily with large language model building.
Well, and the interesting thing is, even if spending doesn't go down, if it doesn't keep up at the same rate, and it doesn't look like it necessarily is going to, at least if you look at the revenue projections, then NVIDIA might not be in the same position. Ben, as you said, there's a lot of competition out there. So does that mean investors at this point, is it too early to look to the competition to invest, or to look to the bigger ecosystem to invest?
Yeah, I think this is where the work's really got to come in to really understand where these workloads are going to go. Looking at where a lot of big businesses and enterprises are going to want to run their workloads either in the cloud or on-prem. And I do believe there's something to this AI factories, sovereign AI, that's going to happen. But does that mean that's totally NVIDIA systems? I think that's still an open question. It's really going to come down to cost, right? We know that running inference is a big part of the workload, and one of the most important important parts about inference. And what you need to do technically is you need to be able to handle, millions upon millions of people at the same time, querying and getting predictive response and doing all the AI things that we talk about. And so can every other product handle those concurrent inference workloads? Jensen brought this up on the call. It's something that we hear regularly as people are exploring where to put those workloads in the cloud. So I do think that there's an argument to be made for Nvidia, but again, as we said, right, there's a huge set of competition out there, and this inference point, is the sole reason why Google's doing TPUs, Microsoft's doing Maya, which is their accelerator, and why Amazon has Inferentia, their inference engine, is they're doing it to build these workloads for those. So it's very competitive, but I just don't think we have an answer to where all these workloads are going to go yet.
Paul, beyond NVIDIA, let's talk about another name you like, which is Dell. That's another name, Paul. It's an AI play. It's another name investors have piled in. Why is Dell a buy here, Paul?
So I do think that there'll be a continued strength in server demand. I've played very successfully Supermicro over the last couple of years. However, that stock seems to be stretched to me. So I'm looking to carry on with the same theme. And when I take a look at the other players, I much admire Dell. I don't necessarily admire HP's management team, don't have confidence, or at least enough confidence in their execution. So Dell is my way to play it, because Supermicro has already been too good of an investment for me.
And Paul, what about, the hyperscalers themselves, right? Not necessarily the infrastructure as much, although I guess you could call the hyperscalers infrastructure. But I'm just curious if you think that they're also a good way to play this.
Oh, yeah. I own the hyperscalers. I will say, or take, some offense to a point made just now that there's competition coming. I think a lot of these AI chip companies, yes, they've been talking about stuff on the podium. They have it in press releases. They have it in PowerPoint presentations. But frankly, I'll believe it when I see it. So I think the threat on the AI chips is less for NVIDIA than people are making it out to be. I really think AMD will get there before too long. Company super well managed under Dr. Lisa Su. But here is another competitor, Intel. Intel has sucked for a couple of decades. And so they're taking the company in the right direction. But come on, when they talk about their manufacturing process, let's see it first. But I do think the hyperscalers are a way to play it. And of course, another way to play it is some of the other companies in the AI ecosystem. I mentioned Dell. We got Supermicro. Arista Networks looks pretty interesting today, down 5% overnight. So those are some of the plays instead of just piling into NVIDIA, which I've already done.
Well, Ben, respond to that if you would. I mean, you guys are smarter on the technical stuff than I am, to be sure. So Ben, I'm curious, Jensen Huang would probably agree with Paul and say this is very difficult to do at the advanced level that we do it. So really hard to come up with a new chip to compete. But exactly how hard is it, I guess?
I think the best way to think about this, and this sort of ties to a little bit of the segment that you had before about what's going on with AI PCs. I was at the Monday launch with Microsoft and Copilot PCs, and they made a big deal of this new thing called the NPU. And so why are all these AI workloads moving to the NPU, or why are they making this a big deal, in that you want to run these things on this workload? And basically what it comes down to in terms of the sheer efficiency of running AI workloads for saving of power, right? So giving you battery life, the NPU is the best way to do that. Everybody that runs these workloads in the cloud just completely knows that GPUs are amongst the largest energy hogs when it comes to these things. And that's really where this inference debate goes. So you can think of what Microsoft's doing with Maya, or what Amazon's doing with Inferentia, and Google's doing with TPUs, which already have a tremendous amount of customer success and they're already proving this in the market. And they have a whole host of customer success stories, economic stories, money saving stories, performance per per watt stories. So there's and the way I think of those accelerators is they're basically NPUs. And that's really what they are. And there's a whole roadmap for these companies. It's not stopping here. They've got a long, long roadmap. And the bottom line is they're optimizing their software so that when a company comes to them and says, here's my AI workload, their software is deciding where it goes. And this is just the ultimate trend of the hyperscalers. So yes, people can choose to run those on the GPUs if they want, or a whole host of businesses are just going to say, I'm bringing my workload to your cloud, I'm writing my cloud in your software, and that abstraction layer at a Google, at Amazon, at Microsoft will then decide where those workload goes. So there's a portion of this that is actually outside of NVIDIA's hands. They don't want to talk about that because the hyperscalers are going to be in a position to control those workloads. And this is why they're investing in those strategies. It just saves money and it saves energy. And we know that that's a huge deal in the hyperscaler route. And that's why I think over the course of the next few years, you will see a far more diversification of workloads because it makes economic sense and it's better from an energy savings standpoint as well.
Ben, Paul, that was a great discussion, great debate. Thank you guys for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.